Good afternoon. Welcome back to today's workshop on working or transforming our negative thinking. So just to briefly recap a bit what we covered this morning, I start off by defining negative thinking. Think of it as a category of our different habits of thinking, how we use our thoughts. In this case, negative thinking means start off, arise from not so wholesome intention, unwholesome intention, probably one to do with craving or greed or attachment or anger or hatred, or one of ignorance. Ignorance can be viewed as a form of closed-mindedness, in which we hold tightly onto certain views or opinions and we refuse to revisit or reinvestigate them. And so not only are this thinking born out of such an unwholesome intention, in the process of engaging in such thinking, often they introduce a certain distortion into our understanding of reality. So most of, or in fact, we can say in the Buddhist context, all the unwholesome qualities are either based on, and they themselves introduce additional distortion to our understanding, our perception of reality. So, and that's one of the reasons why they are unhelpful, because they distort our perception and understanding of reality. And so no matter how much energy we invest in this kind of thinking, we are never going to get it right, because of that underlying distortion. And the end result of this kind of thinking is, again, they increase our suffering. They destroy the peace of mind. They stir up, cause agitation, disturbance to our body and mind. So how do we relate to these negative kind of thinking habits in such a way that we can diminish their negative impact on us? So I mentioned that in this workshop, I'm not going to look at the contents of such negative thinking, simply because there's just so many different possible contents. But instead, we're going to look at just the process itself. We start off in the first meditation of today, learning to discern through mindfulness, when our attention is involved with sensing the reality of this moment, primarily through our senses, and when our attention is caught up in thinking. Most likely it's kind of negative or reactive thinking, thinking that we are so habituated to that they tend to arise, and they have a great ability to hijack our attention, to draw our attention into them, and hold our attention within the train of thoughts. So by discerning the two, learning to discern, we can learn to see and recognize a thought as a thought, to recognize, oh, that is my thinking, my thinking about this matter, my thinking about this person. Whether the thinking itself is accurate or not is something we need to investigate. But first, we should try to be able to tell the difference between my thought about this person and the reality of this person, my thought about that situation and the reality of the situation itself. Second meditation, we look at how to work on diminishing the impact of such negative thinking habits. And we work not on the manifest or conscious level, but we try to reach down and influence the level much deeper down. In the Buddhist context we describe as the level, the seeds, the potentials, our habitual tendencies, so to speak. We've tried to nurture wholesome seeds, so that they're more likely to respond to situation as opposed to our negative thinking habits. And also so doing, we plant more of those wholesome seeds. So on the seed level, we can work to diminish the impact of our negative thinking habits. And in this session, we start by looking at yet another aspect of our thinking habits that kind of reinforce the negativity. And that is our reaction to this kind of habits of us. So like some of us might have the habits of worrying. There's a very common one. We worry a lot. So there is a particular way of thinking. Usually it's a habitual tendency and is easily triggered by the certain situations we find ourselves in. We don't really have much control over that kind of worrying, especially like they have a certain obsessive or compulsive quality to it. But yet that worrying itself can be quite damaging to us. It definitely disturbs our peace of mind. And in response to that, when we notice ourselves doing it, what happens is we tend to react to, in this case, worrying, the worrying tendency. Maybe more likely with aversion. We are upset about ourselves. We are upset by it. We get angry. In fact, we react to it in a similar way, in a negative way. Yeah. And so this time, sometimes we call this the secondary reaction. So our reaction to a situation, so to speak. And the secondary reactions tends to aggravate the situation, because they belong to the same category. They are also a kind of negative thinking. So we get really entrenched in, with like a double whammy. So we are really entrenched in this pattern of reactions and further reactions to reactions. Even though they may not be the same, but nonetheless they belong to the same category, of thinking that is motivated by unwholesome qualities, unwholesome intention, unhelpful intentions. And also they introduce further distortion into the situations, and they quite often lead to the result of suffering, or lead to a result of disturbance of our body and mind. So this way of reacting to what we find within ourselves, reacting to our habits, not only does not help us to be free from our old habits, but instead it becomes yet another way we reinforce such a negative thinking habits. So we are actually pouring oil onto fire. We will burn even stronger. And which is why we find that no matter how upset we are by, let's say, our worrying, how strong we reject it, or we will have aversion towards it, or sometimes people, not with worrying, but other tendencies, we develop fear. So no matter how strong our reaction towards them, it doesn't seem to stop them from arising. In fact, more likely than not, they will arise more frequently and more powerfully. It's because the way we use our attention, the energy of attention, we have used it in a way that is contradictory to our intention. By feeding our so-called secondary reactions of aversion, of rejection, of getting upset with ourselves, or sometimes we get depressed, and so on and so forth, or feel guilty, or feel shame, feel ashamed. So all this whole basket of secondary reactivity or reactions belong to the same category. And so by giving them the energy of our attention, we are, in a way, fueling the same thing that we are trying to be rid of. So here is yet another area we can really make a big difference in our own experience. If we can replace this secondary reaction, instead of reacting to, if I find myself getting more and more anxious, my thoughts turn towards anxious thinking, thoughts of anxiety. How do I react to it? How can I respond to this pattern of thinking habits, thinking behavior? By changing how I respond to it or how I view it, I might actually go a long way to help to, how should I say, minimize the damage. Right? So I can't stop the anxiety from arising, but I can, by thinking differently, prevent it from getting worse and worse, or prevent it from triggering other negative responses, which overall make me even more miserable. So one among the different kind of secondary reactions is very important for us to work on, and it's tied to the Buddhist practice of purification, which is a very common practice in the Buddhist world, especially in the Mahayana Buddhism. This idea of that we need to purify and cleanse ourselves of past negative habits, negative actions, past mistakes, misdeeds, and we try to engage in different practices to cleanse ourselves of their negative influence, to purify ourselves of them. Now, purification practice, of course, has a good intention. Right? We want to diminish the negative impact of past mistakes or misdeeds, diminish the influence of similarly this kind of negative thinking. But I think not uncommon for people to engage in so-called purification practice and end up not in such a good place. Because if you're not careful, the fact that you need to purify is another way we might affirm our inherent impurity, our inherent inferiority, because we are so bad. We keep making all these mistakes. And the more we purify, it's like the more we are affirming the fact that we are somehow inherently or intrinsically bad, a bad person. And although it sounds funny, but it's very real. It's my own experience also. The act of engaging in purifying some of my own mistakes somehow seems to affirm my sense of shame, my sense of unworthiness. Somehow, if we start off with a kind of a broken image of yourself, the act of purifying, if not done properly, can actually intensify the sense of being broken, being damaged, and being inferior and impure. So the more you purify, the more sure you are that you are so impure that nothing can possibly cleanse you, so to speak. And in my case, I think that's because I engage in the practice of purification. But I miss out one of the most important intention or quality that ought to be present in purification practice. And that same quality is also helpful for us to extend towards our negative thinking habits. And that is the quality of forgiveness, a heartfelt, sincere act of forgiveness towards myself, towards others. And if we are able to touch that quality of forgiveness, then our purification practice will be very powerful and very effective. And even just by able to connect with forgiveness, we will be able to, even if we find ourselves reacting negatively, find ourselves feeling depressed, anxious, or angry, or full of craving, if we can hold forgiveness at heart, then we'll be able to really minimize a lot of those unhelpful secondary reactions, and instead help us to really focus on working on getting things to be better. So forgiveness is a very important quality that I think, again, work to help us to transform our negative thinking habits. It's almost like to think in a more forgiving way. Like, for example, let's say I might find myself prone to having depressing thoughts. And sometimes they can come on really strongly. They can come accompanied with the typical awful feelings. Such depressing thoughts can trigger, and not just emotionally, but also physically. You feel the weight and the sense of being weighed down or sucked down into this dark pit, so to speak. Yeah. But if on noticing, on becoming aware that that's how I'm reacting at this moment, somehow this negative, depressing thoughts, this habit has started again, activated again, and is running through my mind. How I relate to it, how I respond to it, makes a big difference. If I can recognize it for what it is, or this is my usual depressing thoughts, and yet at the same time, while acknowledging it, is able to somehow find from within myself this response of being more forgiving, being kinder to myself. So, oh, here I go again. I have again fallen back onto my old habits. That's fine. Maybe there's some reason why I react in this way. I can look at the source of it, the cause of it, but nonetheless, not to react negatively towards such depressing thoughts. Instead, to hold a much more kinder, gentler, forgiving attitude towards them. And in a way, it's almost like forgiving myself for being depressed again. And you'll find that that goes a long way to help us to deal with the issues, whatever it is that trigger this depressing thought, and instead, and will not send us down yet another of those spiraling around just the different kinds of negative thinking reactions that we might have. On top of the depression, instead of getting more angry at ourselves or frustrated or disappointed, and then on top of that, then feeling ashamed or whatever, it can really trigger a whole series of all very unhelpful kind of reactions. So we can put an end to that. We can just keep it just as that, as a whole series of depressing thoughts that is not uncommon for me, because I'm a pessimist. I'm a confirmed pessimist. So there's this tendency, of course. Yeah. But if I'm forgiving, then it stops there. I just deal with it, and that's the end of the problem. Right. And likewise, this is true for any other experiences. Like, for example, in this session, when we start to meditate, you might find yourself falling asleep, which is a very normal thing at this time of the day, right after lunch. How do you respond to that experience of falling asleep in meditation? It's so often for people to feel upset about themselves, frustrated. They may feel, or they might say, "Oh, there's a bad meditation session," or they may even go to the extent thinking that they are a bad meditator. Yeah. So that's how we react to this simple act of feeling sleepy during meditation in the afternoon. And you can see how much the sleepiness itself is just very natural. There's nothing much to it. You just feel drowsy and sleepy, and that's your mind is completely foggy and unclear. And that's why it is. That's its nature. And quite often it's not our fault, because it's triggered by the conditions and the timing. Yeah. But look at the negative reactions we have towards that sleepiness. You may actually say that the negative reaction to the sleepiness is even more damaging than the sleepiness itself. The sleepiness will end. If your meditation is long enough, you could have a nap through the whole session, but more likely than not, you might find that it's just a part of it. And then after that, it passes, and then you come back to wakefulness again. So that is just yet another kind of different experiences that go through our meditation. And if you leave it at that, then that's the way it is. That's where it ends. Maybe we learn, next time, try not to meditate after lunch, and if we do, to expect drowsiness, and that's the way it is, right? Whereas if we don't leave it like that, and instead you allow it to trigger our different kind of reactivity, different people react differently, then that reactivity actually is more harmful. So we want to replace that reactivity. We want to diminish yet again another opportunity for us to trigger or activate our negative thinking habits. We want to replace them, with much more wholesome, helpful way of responding to what we find within our own experience. And so we're going to practice forgiveness. The way I do this practice is quite simple. I don't demand myself to forgive anything at all. I don't even require myself to be forgiving. All I ask of myself is to repeat a few simple phrases that carry, at least for myself, carry the meaning of what it means to forgive. So I'm just testing things out. I'm just trying something out, trying out a different set of response. Whether my mind and body will go along with it or not, I don't know. You will see. And I also do not start off by identifying specific instances or people to forgive, which can make things a lot harder. So I tend to leave it open. So instead of thinking of the person and then trying to forgive this person, or the other aspect is to ask for forgiveness if we are the one who has caused harm, I do it the other way around. I say the words, and I can share with you the phrases that I'm going to invite you to try out. And Of course, you feel free to change the wordings. So I start with the words. So for example, the first section, there are 3 parts to it. The first part, if I have hurt or harmed anyone, knowingly or unknowingly, I ask for their forgiveness. Please forgive me. So that's how I do it. I just read this, or if I memorize it, I just repeat it, and then I just wait and see whether it triggers anything in my mind. If not, say it again. If I hurt or harm anyone, knowingly or unknowingly, I ask for their forgiveness. Please forgive me. And sometimes, after I sit into it, something will arise. The mind might offer me different memories, different incidents, past or present, a long time ago or recent. And I look at it and I say, oh yeah, that's true. I think I've done wrong at that occasion. Then I can, in response to that, if I find that I'm able to, I would say, if I've hurt or harmed anyone in that incident, knowingly or unknowingly, I ask for their forgiveness. Please forgive me. That's all. Right? And this is how I usually do this kind of meditation. Leaving the heart open to respond in its own way. Not forcing it to forgive, but giving it an opportunity to try on this different way of responding to the situation, as opposed to the other old habits of feeling angry or feeling disappointed or frustrated or feeling depressed or anxious and so on. Try something different. Try forgiveness. The second part, so this is towards wrong that I have done others. And the second part is so we ask for others' forgiveness. Second part, we ask for our own forgiveness for all of the ways I have hurt or harmed myself, knowingly or unknowingly. I offer forgiveness. I forgive myself. So for all the hurt and harm that I have caused myself, knowingly or unknowingly, I'm going to, in this instance, forgive myself. So for all my failings, for all my disappointments, for all the things that I ought to do but didn't do, or should do but haven't done it, I must do but simply refuse to do, I offer forgiveness. I forgive myself. Right? And the last one, of course, is the most difficult, I think, in some way. If anyone has hurt or harmed me, knowingly or unknowingly, I forgive them. So this one, I really advise you not to force yourself. Just say it, and if the conditions are right and you find that you are able to acknowledge the harm caused to you, and trying to acknowledge that I'm not ready. Okay, I think going to have some connection issue. So let's do a meditation on forgiveness and try out this different way to respond to what we find in our life, respond to our own negative thinking habits, so that we do not allow ourselves to become entrenched in the same kind of reactivity over and over again. Instead, regardless of what is happening, even we find ourselves falling into one of these old habits, old reactivity, we try to find something wholesome, as a response to that. Right? So let's do a forgiveness meditation, and I invite you to find a comfortable meditation posture, and then I will guide you through this meditation, which just simply try out with 3 parts the different phrases of forgiveness and see for ourselves how we respond to them. All right, so there is no demand, no requirement that we must forgive, or that we are ready to ask for forgiveness, and that is fine. We just test it out and see what happens. Right? So let me ring the bell to. So start with a few moments to settle our body into whichever meditation posture we have adopted. take care that the body feels at ease and comfortable as much as possible in this posture, and ensure that the back or spine is in its natural position, upright if you are sitting, and straight if you are lying down on our back in the supine position. Rest our arms and hands on some physical support so that we can relax our shoulder muscles. Feel free to close your eyes, although there's a great tendency to fall asleep if we do that, but that is also fine. Or we can leave our eyes open, or at any point during a meditation, if you have your eyes closed, you can always open your eyes and look around and let some light in through your eyes, and that is also another way we can proceed. So simply rest the body in this posture for a while. Give it time to adjust to the posture, to find its way into the posture, so that it can become more and more comfortable in this posture. So quite often I would start the meditation with a few minutes given to helping body and mind to shift gears, to make that adjustment and to settle into meditation. And I find the condition that really facilitates this settling down of body and mind is to reconnect our body and the mind, to return our attention to the body, to foster that connection between body and mind. That goes a long way to help the body to adjust itself, also help the mind to adjust itself, and to help them to really let go of things that preoccupy them, things that are not necessary, so that both of them can really settle down peacefully or even blissfully into meditation. So in this case, let's make use of the breath to help us. See if we can. You might like to start with a few deep breaths, breathing in and out deeply, and on the out breath, remember to release. Allow the breath to settle back to its natural rhythm, and see if we can place our attention on the breath and invite our attention to come back to the breath if we do get distracted. And when we are attending to the breath, give special attention to our natural out breath. Breathing out, we are releasing the stale air in our lungs, releasing the carbon dioxide, and we can make use of the out breath to see if we can facilitate the release of unnecessary physical tensions and tightness. Breathing out, we can release the different thoughts, images, and words that preoccupy our mind. So we invite our attention to come back and reconnect with the breath sensations throughout the body. And alongside the breath, we are also reconnecting our attention, our mind, to our own body, so that we are aware of the different bodily sensations at the different parts of the body alongside the breath. Breathing out, releasing. See if we can release any unnecessary tightness and tension in the face. So often we unconsciously tense up our facial muscles. which are completely unnecessary. So see if we do notice tension in our own face, gently see if we can release those tensions, letting them go, and instead let in a feeling of softness and ease and comfort into our own face. Coming back to the breath, breathing out, releasing. See if we can highlight any sense of relaxation, any sense of letting go physically or mentally that we notice as a way to reinforce this practice of releasing on the out breath. So that as we breathe out, we help our body and mind to set aside all those that are unnecessary or unhelpful. And so that body and mind can really come back here and now and settle down in meditation. So I'm going to read the different phrases of forgiveness. And there are 3 sets of them. So we're going to divide this meditation into 3 parts. I invite you to try them out. Feel free to change the words if you like. And without any pressure or demand on yourself, as we say those words, as we repeat those words, see if we can entertain the possibility of asking for forgiveness, or we ourselves offering forgiveness. So the first set: if I have hurt or harmed anyone, knowingly or unknowingly, I ask for their forgiveness. If I have hurt or harmed anyone, knowingly or unknowingly, I ask for their forgiveness. And we can summarize that in the form of the phrase, please forgive me. So at our own pace, as we repeat the phrase in our own words, if you like, seeking forgiveness for our own mistakes or misdeeds, simply allow the mind and heart to suggest, to offer up instances of the past, images of people, situation, and if appropriate, and if you feel willing and sincere, then go ahead and ask for forgiveness. If I've hurt or harmed anyone, knowingly or unknowingly, I ask for their forgiveness. So when we do get distracted, or we find ourselves feeling very dull and sleepy, see if we can simply acknowledge those states of mind, those situations, and to the best of our ability, invite our attention to come back here and now, to come back to the phrases of forgiveness, and see if we can also bring the same attitude of forgiveness into our meditation and forgive ourselves for all this different distraction or sleepiness. If I've hurt or harmed anyone, knowingly or unknowingly, I ask for their forgiveness. Please forgive me. Feel free to continue with the first set of phrases if you like. Otherwise, I invite you to try on the second set, which has to do with ourselves. For all of the ways I've hurt or harmed myself, knowingly or unknowingly, I offer forgiveness. For all of the ways I have hurt or harmed myself, knowingly or unknowingly, I offer forgiveness. I forgive myself. So coming back to the phrases, for all of the ways I have hurt or harmed myself, knowingly or unknowingly, I offer forgiveness. I forgive myself. Allow the words to bring forth when one's heart is ready, the different images, the different instances. And as we consider them, if possible, see if we can find within ourselves forgiveness for our own mistakes, for all the ways that we have hurt or harmed ourselves. And then finally, if you feel like it, we can approach the third set of forgiveness practice. If anyone has hurt or harmed me, knowingly or unknowingly, I forgive them. If anyone has hurt or harmed me, knowingly or unknowingly, I forgive them. So once again, simply allow yourself to consider the possibility of forgiveness. Allow the heart to suggest, to offer up images, memories for our consideration. And if and only if you feel ready, see if you can find within yourself the forgiveness to forgive others. So I wonder if anyone has any questions or comments, or feel free to type them into the live chat if you wish to. So forgiveness is just an example. Of course, I think it's a very important, wholesome intention and quality to cultivate, especially as a way of responding to what we find within our own experience, our own negative thinking habits. Other possible way of responding could be out of compassion. So to view all this different kind of negative thinking from a more compassionate point of view. Others we can apply wisdom. We can be curious and say, "Oh, I wonder why am I reacting in this way?" Loving kindness feels easier than forgiveness, definitely. Yeah. So if loving kindness comes easy, then we can also consider not only loving kindness for ourselves and others, but also when we find ourselves reacting negatively or we find ourselves caught up in some of this negative thinking, see whether we can find within ourselves the sense of kindness towards it. Yeah. Forgiveness is difficult, definitely, but when we are able to, over time, be able to touch the heart of forgiveness, it's very liberating, because it is quite often the very opposite of forgiveness, our anger, our resentment, spite, our wish for retaliation and revenge and so forth, that really hold us stuck, not only in stuck in the negative patterns of thinking, and therefore also it affects our behaviors, how we react verbally, physically, and so forth. Yeah. So nonetheless, I think it's worth working on it gradually, slowly, over time. That's why I said there's no demand on us to forgive. It can take as long as you like, but among all the different forms of forgiveness, I think one very important one is to be able to forgive ourselves for our own failing, forgive ourselves for still not able to step out of some of these negative thinking habits and patterns. I think that is very important to work on. All right, so the last part of this workshop, I want to revisit what we start off with, learning about how we can develop mindfulness, be more mindful of our different habits of thinking, to be able to identify and see clearly, and learn to recognize thinking as thinking, a thought as a thought. And that goes a long way to diminish the influence and the impact of some of this negative thinking. It's because when we are caught in them and we fully believe in the kind of the world or the reality painted by this negative thinking, that it has so much, that is able to cause so much damage or harm to us. So if we are able to, even just to recognize, oh, I think there's a thought, I'm thinking, instead of listening, instead of sensing, I'm actually lost in thoughts. That goes a long way to diminish its effect and its power. We can go one step further in this next meditation, which is also, relatively speaking, a difficult meditation. Is here I invite you to listen a bit more closer to what exactly are this negative thinking talking about. To see its mechanism or the process clearly. Instead of being caught up in what they are talking about or thinking about, to look at the thoughts themselves. See whether we can even see each thought as by itself. Maybe I have a thought, been prone to depressing thoughts. Say, oh, I'm such a useless person. I may say it fully as I think that thought, fully believe in what it's saying. And this meditation is asked you to, as you hear yourself say these words or think these words, I'm such a useless person. Can I, with my awareness, recognize what I'm doing here? Recognize, having a thought, I'm such a useless person. Oh, this is a thought. I'm such a useless person. That I'm actually, all I'm doing is entertaining a thought that I'm such a useless person, regardless of what is the content of the thought, that this is merely expressing a thought. So, usually it's not just one thought, right? It's a whole series of thoughts. I might say, oh, I'm such a useless person. I remember last time I did this and I did that. Then, so it's like storytelling. We are used to telling ourselves stories. This is a sob story, how miserable my life is and how useless I am. And la-di-da, la-di-da, so very depressing. Yeah. But instead of buying into what the thoughts are going on about, here I want to listen, to discern clearly what exactly is the magic behind it. It's almost like filmmaking, right? We are sucked into a film if it's well made, and it holds our attention, it engages our attention to the extent that, of course, we are no longer aware that it's just a film. Someone put it together with actors, with sets, with using cameras, using various the tricks of the trade. Instead, we buy into the story. We become emotionally involved and engaged, and therefore we feel all sorts of feelings in response to what is going on. So we are fully, for the duration of the film or movie, we have fully suspended our disbelief and fully believe in it, which is a making of a great movie, of course. But here in our own mind, that is not such a good thing. Thoughts are a bit like that. The thoughts paint a picture. If you fully believe in it, you will lose the discernment to realize that, hey, this is not reality. This is just my thoughts about reality. And I might not even get it right. Yeah. And I need to break the magic, the spell, the enchantment. And the way to do it is to really see what exactly am I trying to do to myself. I have a thought, I'm a useless person, followed by yet another thought, remember this other time, followed by yet another thought, I did this, followed yet another thought, I did that, yet another thought, this proved I'm useless, and yet another thought, and yet another time. So as you discern the thoughts, you deprive the habits of its magic, the magic of capturing our attention, holding it, channeling our attention down. Usually I call it a tunnel vision. And then because we go along with it, we believe the story that it's telling me. And therefore will tend to react in the same habituated way. Same kind of thoughts, same kind of feeling, same kind of reaction and response, same kind of behavior. That's it. And by the time we come out on the other end of the tunnel, we feel so much, so awful, so bad, because we have fully believed in this. This tunnel vision has limited our perception, limit our thinking, limit our awareness to the extent that we fully buy in to the story. So this is a movie making tunnel. And by what we're going to do is we want to break apart the tunnel, remove the spell, dispel the enchantment, so that we step outside of the tunnel and we can see reality from a much wider perspective. And we can have more freedom to decide how we want to see things, how we want to respond to things. We have more creativity, more flexibility. We no longer want to live life inside all those dark, narrow tunnels that literally dictate that either we go forward or we go back, and that's it. There's no other choice, no other way of seeing things, no other way of feeling about things or responding to things. Life becomes so narrow, limited, constricted, and sometimes you get stuck in the tunnel and you feel that it's hopeless. I can't move forward, I can't go backward. That's it. My life is over. But instead, if you were to look at the tunnel itself, you realize the tunnel is some of the most flimsily made tunnel you can ever believe. It's just made up of a series of thoughts, one after another, somehow strung together. You just need to look at each one of them And better still, later, you cut the connection between them, and the whole tunnel just fall apart. Where previously you find that once you start on one end, you have to wait until you come out the other end before you can see things differently. You can be stuck in the tunnel for a very long time. Now, you can dismantle the tunnel easily by looking at the very mechanism, the very brickwork of that tunnel, by learning to listen and identify, not just a thought as a thought, but the individual thoughts that make up this tunnel. The individual thought that is trying to, in a way, deceive us, and suck our attention into its own storyline. And now we are saying, no, I'm taking back that power for myself. I will do the investigation. I will explore and decide for myself how I'm going to see the situation and how I'm going to respond to the situation. I'm not going to rely on this kind of habits to dictate what I can see and how I can react to it. So to do that, we elaborate on that previous meditation. Instead of labeling them as thinking. We want to listen a little bit closer, pay closer attention. So one way to do it is to repeat, to echo. It's a little bit, echoing. We say something, and then after a few moments, an echo come back. Somehow distorted, somehow different, and usually minus certain qualities. But nonetheless, we can hear the words. That's all we're doing. We are echoing back the thought to ourselves to help us see things clearer, minus all the other stuff that goes along with it. A lot of the emotions and a lot of the involvement, we drop them. We just repeat the words as matter of fact as possible. So like what I just illustrate, a thought pop into my mind. This is going to be terrible if it happens. So then I echo it. Having a thought, this is going to be terrible if it happens. That's it. That's the thought. That is the bare content of the thought, minus all the emotional upheaval and things like that. That's all I'm saying to myself. I say, all right, but what is happening? Then we can listen to the next thought. This is the most terrible thing. You might find that actually quite often we are very repetitive. We just repeat the same thing over and over. Having yet another thought. This is the most terrible thing. So we just echo the thought. And you'll find that very quickly it would lose its emotional content very quickly because it's not able to tap into, not able to trigger some of those emotional reactions if we were to apply this method, right? I acknowledge it is not the easy method. It's more difficult than labeling them as thinking. And sometimes our thoughts come fast and furious, and we are not able to catch each one of them. That's all right. We just summarize the whole lot. Having a lot of thoughts that things is going to be very, very bad. Something like that, yeah. So we can apply it to worrying thoughts, anxious thoughts, fearful thoughts, angry thoughts, craving thoughts, miserly thoughts, whatever it is that pop into our mind. We just echo that once, just so that we can hear them clearly, we can see them clearly. It's also an exercise to help us pay closer attention to what the heck am I thinking about? What am I telling myself? The stories I'm just repeating to myself in my own mind. Can I hear them? Can I give more attention to them? To hear them clearly so that I can see what am I really telling myself and what am I really doing to myself. So let's give it a try. You might find that there's no thought arise. That's fine. You just enjoy sensing, being in the present. Thought arise, even if they are, usually at first they are the random thoughts. It's a good place to practice. Just repeat, echo all these different random thoughts that pop into your head. Occasionally, if you are lucky, you touch a raw nerve somewhere and this one of those episodes arise in the mind. We are reacting to something. Then there's a lot of juicy stuff going on. We give you many opportunities to echo the different thoughts as best as we can. We don't have to be too anal about it. We just do our best to get a hang of this technique, this method, and also to see for ourselves what kind of effect it has on ourselves, right, on our experience. Right? And when things are moving too fast or too quick, or our awareness is too weak, we are not able to catch all of it. That's all right. Just give a summary. Oh, I have lots of thoughts, having lots of thoughts, but not quite sure what on earth they are about. And sometimes that is true because we didn't pay enough attention. We don't notice. We can't recall what my mind has been saying to myself. And that is also all right. Yeah. And then we see for ourselves whether there is any potential of this way of meditating, applying mindfulness of thoughts, whether it can have actually a much deeper impact on our thinking habits. Yeah. All right, so let's do a short meditation, and that will be the last one for this workshop. I hope what I present today makes some sense, and there are some kind of connection between them, and that when you try out, you can see for yourself whether they really have any power to transform our negative thinking, our negative thinking habits. So let's do a meditation. I'll guide you through this. So as usual, we take a few moments at the beginning of the meditation just to allow time for our body to adjust, to find its way into the meditation posture. And we make sure that the posture we have adopted does not introduce additional and unnecessary pain or tension as much as possible. And that the whole posture feels really stable, secure, and balanced to ourselves. And we want to reassure our own body that in this posture it is well supported, well balanced, and safe. And we hope to trigger a natural process whereby our body can respond by loosening up, unwind some of the tightness and tension, and let go of some of those areas of contractions and discomfort. And the next step to help body and mind transition into meditation, we are going to make use of sensing as a support to help us do that. Invite our attention to come back to be in touch with our physical senses. For example, as we quiet down, see if you can listen and be aware of the sounds in your surrounding, including the sound of my voice. Simply welcome in to your awareness the various sounds in the surrounding and listen. Listen without extra effort, simply being quiet and open and receptive, and allow the sounds to come to us. And alongside the sounds, maybe by now we also notice different bodily sensations, including the breath sensations. Sensations at within the body that also simply appear within our awareness. They simply come to us. And we notice them, we are aware of them. Areas of tensions in the body, see if we can notice them and acknowledge them. Acknowledge that certain parts of our body may be feeling tired or tense or tight or just simply uncomfortable. Noticing sounds, noticing bodily sensations, noticing breath sensations. Notice areas of tension and also maybe areas of relaxation, of softening, of relaxing, areas of ease and comfort within our body. Maybe, as usual, a good place to do that is to start with the face. If we find that we have somehow tensed up our facial muscles, we have tightened some of the muscles, maybe at the forehead or around the eyes, we could be clenching our jaw. See if we can gently relax some of those tensions in the face. And notice how they may be replaced by a feeling of softness, of ease and comfort. So coming back to here and now, returning our attention to sensing. Sensing as in listening to sounds. Sensing as in being aware of bodily sensations, breath sensations. In this meditation, we make sensing the support of our attention. We invite our attention again and again to just come back here and now, come back to sensing, to noticing through our physical senses. And sometimes along the way, sooner or later, our attention will most likely be distracted, drawn into thinking, into thoughts. Could be random thoughts, could also be reactive thoughts, reacting to certain things that we somehow remembered or brought to mind. In either cases, see if we can apply the technique of echoing the thought. Not only recognizing it as a thought, but try to echo what it is saying. You can preface it with having a thought, and then very simply repeat that thought as accurately as you can, as precise as you can. Echo the words, but no need to get all entangled with the emotions. So that as you echo, you give yourself a chance to really hear the thought, to really become aware of what your thinking, your thoughts are trying to tell, the story is trying to tell. And then having done that, as always, invite your attention, come back to here, come back to now, come back to sensing. Coming back to sensing, quite often when people first encounter this instruction, you may notice very little thoughts because we are hyper vigilant about it. That's all right, it will pass as we relax into the meditation, as we become less vigilant. You'll find that habitual thinking patterns will re-emerge, and there's the opportunity for us to pay attention, to listen, and to echo. So coming back to sensing the sounds, bodily sensations, sensing what is happening here and now. And when you do notice attention is drawn to thoughts, do our best to be aware of it, to echo its content, to help us see clearly. And if thoughts come in the form of images, memories, do our best to briefly describe it. And if thoughts are many and we are not able to catch individual thoughts or words, then see if we can just offer a summary. In either case, we always invite our attention to come back to the support, to come back to here and now. Coming back to the present moment, coming back to sensing, as we do our best to be mindful of thoughts, to echo their contents, we start to develop awareness and appreciation of the power of our thoughts, their ability to paint a world, a story, a scenario, to hijack our attention, to keep our attention within that world, within that way of thinking, viewing, and reacting. So see if we can discover by listening, by attending, by labeling and echoing. See if we can be mindful of our thoughts as thoughts and deprive them of this power to hold us within their tunnel vision. Then finally, we can dedicate all the positive potentials we created in today's workshop, dedicate them towards the fulfillment of our wishes and aspirations for self and others. Dedicate that may all these wholesome qualities as well as the seeds that we have nurtured and cultivated, may they somehow stay with us, may they linger in body and mind so that they can continue to benefit us. Okay, so there's transforming negative thinking without thinking negatively. Yeah, no need to be too. Of course, the last one does involve us to be aware of what we are saying to ourselves. Sorry, excuse me, saying to ourselves, but we're not actually diving deep into the kind of scenarios, the stories that our thoughts are constructing. We're just looking at almost like the script, so to speak, and reading them line by line without too much emotional content, and just looking at how this series of thoughts, when they somehow get linked together, and when they're able to capture our attention and draw in our emotions, how powerful they are in limiting the way we see and think and respond to our life situation. They actually narrow our view, our vision, so to speak. So by noticing those thoughts, we're trying to liberate ourselves from this confinement, to be able to see the situation from maybe different ways, different angles, different perspective, and be creative in how we respond to the situation. So hopefully, in this way, we, one way or another, manage to transform what would normally be a very negative experience, dominated by our thinking as well as the feeling, maybe sometimes even certain behavior, reactive behavior, and hopefully we can transform it and something really positive and wholesome and beneficial can come out of it. So thank you very much for spending time with me on a nice Sunday. So there's still a few more hours of daylight left. So please enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I hope to see you around at VI. So thank you.